You don't change the world by going and waving signs at people that you've defined as more evil than you. First of all, the probability that they're more evil than you is actually quite low. Because evil though they may be, you're in the same damn boat. And if you divided the world up conveniently so that you can identify the innocent and the damned, or the oppressor and the oppressed, and you think that you're in the positive category, then the probability that you're part of the solution and not part of the problem is zero. So it's just not that easy, and the most profound people that I've ever read have said the same thing over and over. It's like the line between good and evil runs down the middle of every human heart. And the first thing that you're supposed to do is win that battle on your own territory. And that's no bloody joke. That's a difficult thing to do, because it means that you have to recognize yourself as a perpetrator of great evil. And that is what you are. And that's a terrible thing for people to learn. You look at the 20th century and you think, well, who brought on the horrors of the communist systems and the horrors of the Nazi systems? The answer is people just like you. That's the answer. If you don't understand that and you think that answer is wrong, then you're not very wise. And it's not surprising, because the price that you pay for wisdom is radical disillusionment and the confrontation with evil. And no one wants that. Really. It's a terrible thing to confront. And that's because human beings are terrible creatures. Now, I think we're also absolutely remarkable creatures and wonderful creatures, but we have an unlimited capacity for brutality and evil. And every one of us carries it. And so what you do is you try to sort that out in your own life. And you start... I had a guy talk to me just a while back about his life hadn't been going very well, and he decided to put himself together. And he started doing this little ritual thing, which I thought was quite cool. He was kind of an isolated guy, very overweight guy. When I talked to him, he lost about 130 pounds, which was quite impressive. It was part of him putting himself together. But he started doing it by building. He had a bunch of Legos left over from his childhood. And the first thing he did, because he was feeling very nihilistic and hopeless, he found that he got a little bit of satisfaction out of building little things out of Legos, And I thought, well, that was pretty interesting. So he built a bunch of these things. And then he said, well, I got a bunch of these things built, and then I had to figure out how to organize them in the room they were in. I thought, that's cool, because he started high resolution at the level of detail, and was building something that was trivial. He knew that he was just playing a game. But then, as soon as he had a collection of those, then he had to sort out the space that he was going to organize them in. And then he figured out, well, he had to sort out the room that they were going to be in. So he started organizing and beautifying the room. And at the same time, he had modified his diet and he was putting himself together. And that's the right thing to do. That's the right thing to do. Is that there are responsibilities that are awaiting you, that are in your own grasp. And you know what they are. This is also something that no one can preach to you about. It's something you have to decide for yourself, and you can do it quite straightforwardly, and it's something that I do on a regular basis. You sit down in the evening or in the morning and ask yourself, like you're asking someone that you want the answer from, like you really genuinely want to have the answer, not telling yourself, none of that. You're asking yourself, all right, there's a bunch of things about my life that aren't in order, that aren't together, and I know it, and they're making me suffer, and they're making me less than I am. And there's some of those things that are staring me right at the face, and I know what they are, and there's some of those that I can put in order today with a little bit of work, so that when I wake up tomorrow, the domain of my experience, which is basically being itself, the domain of my experience will be more pristine and better put together than it is today. You ask yourself that, you'll find right away. You know what they are, 5 things that come up, bang, 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 and they'll all be things that aren't very heroic, they're kind of trivial, and that you've been avoiding. You've been avoiding them. Those are little dragons of chaos, those things. And they're just little, but that's good because you're not much of a hero warrior, and so maybe little tiny dragons are all the ones that you can put up with now. You sort those things out, and first of all, it'll order the being around you in a more pristine and productive way, and it'll make you just a little bit more focused and together. And what that'll mean is that the next thing you can do is ask yourself the same question, and the problems that will emerge will be slightly larger and more complex. And then you can try to put those in order, and that'll make everything around you more pristine and better put together, and it'll make you a little bit stronger and more clear-headed. And then another set of problems will emerge that's a little bit larger. And if you continue to do that, You know, you'll sort yourself out, you'll clean up your room, you'll put your house in order, and then you can start to work in the community. And by that time, you'll actually have some power and some self-confidence and some confidence and some credence. And you'll be much less likely to stupidly hit something complicated with a stick and say that you fixed it. But you have to start low. You have to. Carl Jung said one of his very interesting phrases. He says that the reason that modern people can't see God is because they won't look low enough. I really like that. I mean, he's an extraordinarily wise person, and what he meant by that was something like what I'm telling you, is that the secret to your existence is right in front of you, and it manifests itself as all those things you know you should do, but you're avoiding. Because one of the things you might ask yourself is, of course you're useless and weak and miserable and cruel and all those horrible things, but partly that's because you're also not what you could be, and part of the reason for that is that you're not doing what you know you should be doing. So you might ask yourself, because this is a very interesting game, if you started doing the things that you know you should do, this is a discussion with your own conscience, if you started doing those things that you know you should do, and you did that diligently, what the hell would you be like in 10 years? Now that's an exciting game. That's an interesting game. And if you play that, you'll find that you're a hell of a lot more than you were. And that's something, at least. You might not hit the pinnacles, but you're going to be a lot more than you are. And then, if you're not weak and miserable and wretched and suffering and dismal and self-pitying and all those things, you're going to be a lot less resentful. You're going to be a lot less brutal. You're going to be a lot less cruel to yourself and to other people. Well, that's a pretty good start. You know, even if you're not a positive force for good in the world, if you just weren't wretched and horrible, that would be a good initial contribution. No? I would say, too, there's a corollary that goes along with that. And this is, so you could look at it this way. This is something that I tried to explain. I did a video on Pinocchio, a couple of videos about Pinocchio, which I've been quite fascinated by, because it's a very good illustration in popular culture of how archetypes manifest themselves and how people understand the archetypes even if they don't know they understand them. Because Pinocchio is a very interesting movie if you think about it. You know, you might ask, well, when modern people think about people going to church, they think, well, how can people believe those foolish superstitions? It's like, yeah, fair enough, good question. Well, what the hell do you think you're doing when you go to a movie? Like, what are you doing? Here you are. I know you probably haven't seen Pinocchio lately, but whatever. You know, it's the same thing. You're an adult. You bring your 5-year-old to see Pinocchio, and you're just as entranced as he is. And think about what you're doing. First of all, you know those are drawings. They're not real creatures. They're drawings. Second, they're about a puppet. A wooden puppet who actually happens to wander around, who is being guided through life by a cricket, whose highest goal is to kill for reasons no one can understand. And somehow that makes a fairy turn him into something that's real. Like, that's strange, people, right? The fact that you're doing that is very peculiar. And it says something about what people are like. It means that we understand things that we don't know we understand. And so Pinocchio is it's a very interesting movie. I can tell you what its fundamental presupposition is. I'll just guide you through it very, very rapidly. So, at the beginning of the movie, Geppetto, who's the archetype of the good father, by the way, which is an archetype that we've forgotten about, but it does exist because our culture isn't just a tyrannical patriarchy. As you can tell by the fact that we're warm and comfortable and we're not tearing each other to shreds at the moment, which is what you do in a state of absolute chaos, right? It's mayhem while you're freezing and starving, right? And that isn't what we have. We have peace, and it's rare, and it's amazing that we have it. But we shouldn't take it for granted, because it's not the normal order of things. The normal order of things is destructive chaos. And if you're fortunate enough to live somewhere that's peaceful and productive, you should thank your lucky stars every second of your life. And if you don't do that, all it means is that you don't know anything about history, and you know nothing about human beings. Because things can get absolutely monstrous, and it happens all the time. And there's always a fraction of the population who thinks that's how they like things to be. And perhaps there's a fraction of you that's like that too. And I wouldn't nurture that fragment if I was you, unless you wanted to go where it will take you.